Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions for UFC 136, Edgar versus Maynard 3. The event will take place live on October 8th from Houston, Texas, and will feature 2 UFC title fights, along with the typical 3 other fights that will go with it for 5 pay-per-view main card fights, 2 high-profile Spike prelims, and 4 Facebook undercard fights that I will be predicting all for 11 fights, my biggest prediction show to date. And I haven't for the prediction race, nothing to update yet because the Cruz versus Johnson card has not gone down. It actually takes place the night I'm shooting this. So nothing to report there, no updates in the rankings or anything, so I'll get back to you with my next show, and there'll be a whole pile of updates there. As for my prediction tournament, I'm really hoping I get a few more signups. I'm up to about 12 or 13 competitors. I want to get it started for UFC 137. All you need to be able to do is you send me your email and an instant message. I will write back when it comes time with the fights you predict. Send me who you want. I'm going to line everybody up in first rounds in brackets, like a tournament, like a Grand Prix, and then you'll slowly progress through after a couple events. I'll finalize the details when we get everybody set up. But I want to get it going for 137. So if you are interested, please send me your instant message with all just your email address. It doesn't cost anything. You don't win anything, just to see how you do. I will cover it extensively on my show, and it'll be kind of cool to see how it lays it. I'll come up with a couple neat little graphics. And finally, before getting into the actual predictions, I have hooked myself up with a brand new website, or a new website, new to me anyway, MMABettingOdds.com. It's a fantastic website. It provides you with a whole bunch of tools to help you with your MMA betting options. It gives you different sites. It helps you to figure out, based on your location in the world, what's the best betting site that you can work with for betting on MMA. It provides you different odds. My videos there's all kinds of different little write-ups. Fantastic site. I'm just starting to go through it right now and finding all kinds of neat little tools. Please check it out. That's MMABettingOdds.com. Fantastic website for those of you who are betting enthusiasts. And just like me, if you are Sports Interaction, click on the link in the description below and you can get yourself a small sign-up bonus. A little bit goes to Kamikaze Overdrive to help me out. They've been doing a fantastic job allowing you to do different bets and make some money, couple cool little parlays with some props. They allow you to parlay a prop bet together with another fight where other sites don't do that, which is a really neat option. And I'm really enjoying some of the changes they made. And on that note, let's get to those predictions. All right, let's kick off our preliminary predictions. In the middleweight division, Steve Cantwell will take on Mike Macenzio. Both fighters are desperate for a victory, as each has dropped their last 3. Cantwell's making his middleweight debut, and Macenzio is returning to the division after taking a light heavyweight bout on very short notice. This fight is a typical striker versus grappler matchup. Macenzio averages over 3.5 takedowns over a 15-minute fight, but only completes 30% of his attempts. Cantwell, on the other hand, lands 3.72 significant strikes per minute and also defends 89% of his opponent's takedown attempts. Cantwell's defeats have come against Cyril Diabate, Louise Kane, and Brian Stann twice, all very good strikers. Cantwell's a BJJ black belt, which should help him should the fight go to the mat, and he should have the edge standing. I'll take Cantwell to win this fight by submission. Aaron Simpson versus Eric Schaefer. Eric Schaefer is an injury replacement for Nick Catone, and he's returning to the UFC where he was 3-4 with wins over Jason McDonald and Houston Alexander. Aaron Simpson has stumbled in 2 attempts against next-level opponents in Mark Munoz and Chris Lieben, but outside of those 2 fights, he is undefeated. In the Munoz fight, it was a close decision defeat, even though Simpson completed 5 takedowns. Against Mario Miranda, he was successful 10 times on 26 takedown attempts, and Schaefer has had issues with stronger wrestlers. Schaefer's last 2 UFC defeats came against Jason Brills and Ryan Bader. Aaron Simpson continues the trend and defeats Schaefer by decision. Taikang Zong versus Darren Elkins. This is an interesting bout. Both guys are looking to move up the ranks of the featherweight division. Elkins is coming off a disputed decision win, while Zhang submitted Jason Reinhardt in his last outing. Elkins is primarily a wrestler, which cost him against Charles Oliveira, and Zhang has 10 submission wins on his record, including 2 in the UFC in his UFC WEC career. I'll take Zhang to catch Elkins with a submission. Joey Beltran versus Stipe Miocic. Miocic is a decent heavyweight prospect with a solid background in both boxing and wrestling. He is undefeated with 5 knockouts and 1 submission and enters the UFC with a lot of hype. Joey Beltran has shown that he is easily one of the toughest guys in the division. He has 11 wins by knockout while never being stopped and has taken on some decent strikers. Miocic is probably the better overall talent, but he also has a lot of red flags. This is his UFC debut. He only has 6 fights. He's fought lower-level opponents. He's never gone beyond the midway mark of a fight, and he's facing a guy that can take a punch, which can be difficult for a fighter who usually knocks his opponent out. Look for Beltran to endure early and slowly take the fight over. Joey Beltran wins this fight by stoppage. Damian Maia versus Jorge Santiago. Santiago has struggled in the UFC with a 1-3 record, but has had success pretty much everywhere else. His biggest question mark is his chin, which is a problem because Santiago is primarily a striker. He is capable on the mat, but against Maia, that is a place you don't want to go. If Damian gets the fight to the ground, he can end it, even though Santiago has never been submitted. On the feet, Maia has shown significant improvement in his striking, and he clipped Mark Munoz early in their bout. Look for Maia's stand-up to continue to improve, and I'll take a bit of a risk and say Maia wins this by knockout. Anthony Pettis versus Jeremy Stephens. Both guys are bonded strikers. Pettis is known for his flashy style and creativity, while Stephens is all about power. Stephens is capable of ending any fight with one punch, but he has had issues with faster, technically sound strikers like Melvin Guillard, Sam Stout, and even Marcus Davis was outstriking him until he got knocked out. Pettis will mix things up better than Stephens, probably working in a few takedowns, and he will win this fight by decision. Those are my preliminary picks. Let's get to the main card. Our opening fight of the evening is a rematch from the Ultimate Fighter 12 finale as Phan, 16-10, will look for retribution against 19-7-1 Leonard Bad Boy Garcia. In their first meeting, Garcia earned a highly contested split decision victory. Many people felt that Phan did more than enough to earn the victory, and Dana White awarded him his win bonus along with setting up this rematch. In their first meeting, there wasn't a ton of groundwork, but there was a little bit. Garcia scored a takedown but didn't do much with it. Leonard is a brown belt in BJJ and has 9 career submission wins. Even though Garcia is capable on the mat, his want of scoring the impressive knockout has drawn him away from his ground game. Phan, on the other hand, also has a pedigree that would suggest a submission win is possible. He's a BJJ black belt with 5 career wins by tap-out and was able to take Garcia's back and nearly secured a rear naked choke. But when it comes right down to it, the first installment of Phan Garcia was a stand-up war. Garcia started off picking his spots but quickly became wild and uber aggressive. He throws a mixed bag of strikes, he employs a left jab and a crazy right hook that, if it connects flush, could end the fight. Along with this, Garcia throws leg kicks to all areas of the body and will mix in knees and changes levels nicely. But like I said, Bad Boy tosses caution to the wind and wins all of his strikes, focusing on power over technique. The issue with that is when he misses, and he does it a lot, it drains his stamina, and as a result, he can usually only fight in this aggressive style for the first half of each round before gassing. Combine this with a very awkward style of delivering his strikes, and Garcia, albeit entertaining, has a lot of holes that can be exploited. Phan is almost the complete opposite, and I think that's why the fight was so entertaining. He's a patient striker that relies on technique. He has a devastating body shot, a left hook to the liver that he can deliver on its own or as part of a combination. He will throw leg kicks, again working them in combination with his punches. He will jab with his left, often doubling it up, and then stick a right straight down the middle. Nam has a good chin and can take a lot of punishment, but at the same time is quite adept at keeping his hands up as well as circling away from his opponent's onslaught. Phan did a nice job of letting Garcia punch himself out in the early part of the rounds, backed him up against the cage with his strikes, and proceeded to really unload on him. Prior to taking Garcia's back, Nam hurt Leonard with his strikes in the second round and had him in serious trouble but could not finish. I think that this match could come down to who can make the proper alterations in their game plan. Joe kept citing Leonard's lack of discipline during the fight, and combine that with the fact that Garcia has been in a number of fights similar in nature to the first Phan fight, where he slugged it out and either lost or narrowly won, and I don't expect Garcia will change too much for fight number 2. Look for Nam to wait out Garcia's striking barrage, attack on the feet, and again, but I would think he will recall the success he had on the mat and look to take a gassed opponent down and go for a submission. Both guys are coming off defeats. Phan was dropped his first 2 UFC bouts, and Garcia lost a rematch against the Korean Zombie, which also preceded a controversial Garcia win, so I anticipate both will be desperate for a victory. I like the more technical fighter, so my pick is Phan to defeat Leonard Garcia by submission. Up next, we have a lightweight bout between 46-9-3 Melvin the Young Assassin Guillard and 20-6 Joe J-Lo Lauzon. Lauzon has alternated wins and losses over his last 4 bouts and is coming off a victory, while Guillard has rocketed up the division with 5 straight wins and 8 in his last 9. This is an important fight for both guys. For Guillard, he's on the cusp of a title shot. Wins in 5 straight have propelled him to the upper echelon of the already crowded lightweight division. Guillard should take note of Jim Miller's recent defeat, as Miller was also within reach of a title shot after a significant winning streak, but a defeat dropped him down the ranks. Lauzon is looking for 2 things in this bout: consistency and a big name win to add to his resume. Joe has alternated wins and losses over his last 5 fights, and has an overall record of 7-3 in the UFC, and even though this win total is pretty impressive, it's the significance of his defeats that is concerning. J-Lo hasn't been able to take the next step. Success against lower tier competition has quickly been erased in defeats against Kenny Florian and George Soteropoulos, where he was simply overmatched. Lauzon is a BJJ purple belt with 16 career submission wins. He attacks ferociously when looking for a submission. Against Gabe Rudiger, he quickly overwhelmed him, took the fight to the mat, and finished it with an armbar. His latest win over Kurt Warburton was another example of how effective Lauzon's ground game is, finishing Warburton with a Kimura inside the opening 2 minutes. Lauzon has decent striking, and his ground and pound, especially his elbows, are an effective complement to his mat game. The issue with Lauzon is his endurance. Against George Soteropoulos, he started off really strong, using his speed to outstrike the Aussie 21-11. But as Joe began to slow down, Soteropoulos took over the fight, eventually finishing it with a Kimura. In similar fashion, he exploded out of the gates against Sam Stout, but faded and suffered a decision defeat. Melvin Guillard has been plagued by submissions throughout his career, suffering 7 of his 8 defeats via tap-out. His last game against Nate Diaz back in 2009, when Melvin shot for a takedown, Diaz cinched up a guillotine choke for the victory. Since that fight, Guillard switched to Greg Jackson's camp and has made significant strides in this area. Over his last 4 fights, he has suffered only 2 takedowns, which is remarkable when you look at who his opponents have been. Melvin was able to stop 6 attempts made by Evan Dunham prior to the knockout and confidently dismantled NCAA Division I wrestler Shane Roller inside the first round. Melvin does have a wrestling background, but he's now using it to keep his fight standing. Guillard has heavy hands and is lightning fast. He uses a lot of movement, darting in and out, attacking and retreating before his opponent can respond. He has 19 career knockouts, including being the only man to KO vaunted striker Dennis Seaver, stopping him in 38 seconds. The Dunham fight was a perfect example of the fighter he has developed into. He defended Dunham's takedowns and used his quickness to outland him 28-2 and force the ref stoppage. I anticipate that Lauzon is going to attack early and look to get this fight to the ground, but Melvin's ability to close the distance, strike, and retreat will make it hard for Joe to get his hands on him. Look for Lauzon to expend a lot of energy trying to get the fight to the mat, and as he slows down, Melvin will begin to pick him apart. Comparatively, Lauzon's struggles against the striking of Sam Stout and Guillard's dominance over Evan Dunham are good indicators of how this fight will play out. Joe's a tough kid, but he's been knocked out in the past, so my prediction is Melvin Guillard to defeat Joe Lauzon by knockout. Our next fight has middleweight title contention implications as Chael Sonnen, 26-10-1, makes his return against 11-3 All-American Brian Stann. Sonnen's last bout was a submission defeat against the current middleweight champion, while Stann has won 3 in a row, all since dropping down to middleweight. Brian Stann enters this bout with the opportunity to earn a title shot. So does Chael Sonnen, but probably more important to him, it's an opportunity to get another chance at Anderson Silva. Now looking first at Stann, since his drop to middleweight, he is 3-0. He has made incredible strides, both since making the drop and joining Greg Jackson. Stann is athletic, strong, and has a heavy set of hands. Against George Santiago, he dropped him with a left in the opening round and finished him with a right late in the second. Prior to the finish, Brian showed excellent composure in the face of a fighter with an unpredictable and explosive striking repertoire. Stann had success with his hands and used them in combination with his stiff leg kicks. Now, Santiago has a suspect chin, but Stann was able to stop Chris Lieben one fight prior, and Lieben has one of the best chins in the business. Continuing to move back in time, in Stann's middleweight debut, he defeated Mike Macenzio via triangle, but during that fight, he suffered 5 takedowns, which exemplifies a significant hole in his game. Prior to his drop to middleweight, Stann was dominated on the ground by Phil Davis, taken down 7 times by Rodney Wallace, and submitted by Krzysztof Szosinski. The ground game is clearly his Achilles heel, and I don't mean to undermine Stann's current success, but over his last 2 bouts, he really hasn't been tested by a top-level grappler. He won't be able to say that after UFC 136, as Chael Sonnen is one of the best wrestlers in the UFC. Over Chael's last 4 bouts, he has used his wrestling skills to take him from a non-factor to arguably the top middleweight not named Silva. Chael started his run to the title contention with a win over Dan Miller, followed it up with an upset win over Yushin Okami, and then he spoiled Nate Marquardt's title aspirations. Chael used his wrestling and dogged determination to overwhelm and outwork his opponents. Sonnen has explosive takedowns, and when he gets his opponent to the mat, he is incredibly difficult to shake off. Even one of the biggest middleweights in Okami struggled against the pressure and strength of Sonnen. He did the same against Anderson Silva, with one significant difference. Chael has a history of submission defense issues. He's been tapped out 8 times in his career, and that's how Silva was able to escape a dominant performance by Chael. Chael has surprisingly good striking, jabbing with both hands, and he uses a leg kick where he leans back when he throws it, which makes it difficult to counter-strike against. Brian Stann will need to keep this fight standing, but the pressure that Chael brings will make this easier said than done. Stann will need to pick and choose when he uses his leg kicks because they will offer Sonnen a perfect opportunity for a takedown. If he can't kick, Stann will lose an important dimension of his striking. Stann's KO power is an ever-present threat, but Sonnen has never truly been knocked out, suffering 2 TKOs as the result of a cut and a corner stoppage. When it comes to decisions, Sonnen is 15-1, and this reflects upon his ability to control his opponent with both his pressure and wrestling. On the feet, Stann is probably more dangerous than Chael, but don't underestimate what Sonnen is capable of. On top of this, I just can't see how Stann will be able to keep the fight standing where other more talented grapplers have failed. I like Brian Stann, but stylistically this is a bad matchup. He'll need the knockout, and Chael will need to be wary of Stann's improving submission skills, and even with Sonnen's long layoff, I've got Chael Sonnen to defeat Brian Stann by decision. Our co-main event of the evening is our first of 2 title fights. The featherweight champion, 19-1 Jose Aldo, will battle UFC veteran 16-5 Kenny "Kenflo" Florian. For Florian, this will be his 3rd attempt to capture UFC gold, while Aldo is trying to defend his WEC/UFC belt for the 4th time, and he's won 11 in a row. Florian has a history of not showing up in big fights. Most recently, he was defeated by Maynard in a #1 contender's bout for the lightweight title. This defeat prompted his drop to 145, where he started with a win over Diego Nunes. What we saw in that fight was that, yes, Kenny can make the weight, and was able to endure for the 3 rounds without gassing. Florian got off to a bit of a slow start against Nunes, but eventually took over and won a convincing decision. Kenny's a talented Muay Thai striker. He has solid leg and body kicks and uses a sharp jab, which was put on display against Takanori Gomi. Florian is a 2nd-degree black belt with 10 submission victories. Florian's wrestling is underrated, completing almost 50% of his takedowns, while defending 6 of every 10 of his opponent's shots. Against Nunes, he was able to complete 4 of 9 attempts, and in his win over Clay Guida, he used his strikes to set up his shot, leading to a slam takedown. Florian's only been stopped once, but that was a lifetime ago back at middleweight. Well, Jose Aldo has been near untouchable, defeating every challenger that has been put in front of him. His leg kicks are lethal. There exists no better example of this than his 5-round domination of Uriah Faber. They are both heavy and lightning fast, so fast that even a seasoned kickboxer like Mark Hominick was unable to check them. His hands are equally as dangerous, stopping 12 opponents, including Manny Gambarian, who he quickly rendered unconscious with a flurry of fists. To put things in perspective, Anderson Silva lands 3.18 significant strikes per minute, Aldo lands 4.06. Jose only has 2 submissions on his record and has suffered his lone defeat by sub, but he is a BJJ black belt, completing 60% of his takedown attempts while defending a remarkable 94% of his opponent's shots. He has a perfect 4-for-4 defending Mike Brown's takedowns, but did find himself on his back in the final round against Hominick. But in that fight, there were a number of outside hindrances that could have attributed to Aldo's drop-off in performance in that last round. Comparing Aldo and Florian, Aldo is both younger and faster than Florian, as well as the better striker. The rapid nature of Aldo's striking, including his knee strikes, has given his opponent fits. But Florian will be aided by a 4-inch reach advantage, along with a 3-inch height advantage, which will further increase the distance. Aldo has never had to deal with this type of reach, and Florian knows how to exploit it both with kicks and his jab. To counter this, Aldo has an uncanny ability to close the distance with incredible speed when striking, especially when he throws his uppercuts. Further, Nunes was at an even greater reach at disadvantage, and he was still able to connect with Florian, dropping him twice, and it was clear that until Nunes got tired, his speed was creating issues for Kenflo. Florian will try to implement a similar game plan to the one he used against BJ Penn. He will try to get in tight, using both the clinch and takedowns to wear Aldo out, along with negating Jose's speed. From Aldo, look for him to use his leg kicks to punish Florian, which will limit Kenflo's movement, and when Kenny slows down, Aldo will open up. And I don't expect Jose will incorporate as many takedowns as he did against Hominick, because Florian is far more talented off his back than the Canadian. In the end, I would like to see Kenny Florian reach his goal and give him much more of a chance than most people do, but I'm going to pick Jose Aldo by decision. Not as easy a pick as I expected it to be, but let's go with Aldo. In the main event of the night, we move to the lightweight division as the current champion, Frankie the Answer Edgar, 13-1-1, will battle 11-0-1 Gray the Bully Maynard. This is their 3rd meeting, which was originally scheduled to take place at UFC 130. Maynard holds the edge with the win back in 2008, which was followed by the draw at UFC 125. This fight was almost not needed as Gray nearly stopped the champ in the opening round, earning a 10-8 on the judges' card. But Frankie's ability to battle back and win 3 of the next 4 rounds kept the belt on his waist, and in the end, created the need for this matchup. Let's look at the challenger first. Gray showed that he clearly has more power and the superior chin of the 2 fighters. He dropped Frankie with a left hand and followed it up by battering his opponent for the remainder of the round. Maynard stayed true to his name and bullied the smaller opponent, throwing technique to the wind, and after round 1 ended, he had landed 47 strikes and completed 1 of 2 takedowns. But that last stat is a little concerning. Maynard has an overall takedown success of 60%. In the first meeting, he completed 9 of 10 takedowns, but at UFC 125, he was 3 for 17. Now, some might suggest that Maynard punched himself out in the first round, but I think that the beating that Frankie endured puts them on a fairly even playing field. Now, in the majority of Gray's fights, he has relied on his takedowns to help him to steal or at least solidify a round. If he is unable to get Frankie down and keep him down, that will take away one of Gray's biggest weapons. Now, Gray is primarily a boxer and he uses minimal kicks. I said above he has more power than Edgar, but I give Frankie a significant advantage in technique. Gray does throw combinations, but he got caught up looking for the knockout. But even in past fights, Gray has had issues landing his strikes effectively. Frankie, on the other hand, has no problem making contact. Fight metric has Edgar landing almost 1.5 more significant strikes per minute than Maynard. He had a lot of success with his combos, changing levels, but almost always finishing with a right hand to the chin that he connected with several times. Throughout the fight, Edgar was able to use that right to snap Maynard's head back on multiple occasions, but he really was never able to drop him. Where Gray would land one punch, Frankie would deliver a flurry, mixing in his kicks. It is clear that Gray has finishing power, but having rewatched that fight, the punch that rocked the champ was the result of Edgar making a mistake and dropping his hands. Throughout the remainder of the fight, Gray didn't land with nearly as much success, never connecting with more strikes than Frankie in any given round, including deficits of 21-6 in the second round and 23-7 in the fourth. Backing this up is the fact that Gray only connects on 34% of his strikes and has only 2 career knockouts despite evidence of power in his punches. Edgar's movement gave BJ Penn all kinds of trouble, and it was clear that Gray was having issues as well. For the most part, he was standing in the center of the cage and following Frankie, but he did have some success when he pushed forward, but he didn't do it enough. Frankie had much more success with his takedowns in this fight than when they first met, again using his quickness and striking to set up his shot and catch Maynard off balance. The key to Frankie's success was that he focused more on technique than power. Again, overall, I think that Frankie has made the more significant developments in his game since their first meeting. Is it possible that Gray could rock Frankie and finish the fight this time? Absolutely. And if Gray fights a more complete style, he has beaten the champ before. But in their first meeting, Edgar landed more strikes than Gray, using his speed and footwork to make the difference. Edgar's striking was superior again in the second bout, and his ability to stuff Gray's takedowns while completing his own was a huge difference maker. The champ will learn from the mistakes that nearly cost him the first bout, which will leave fewer openings for the challenger. Overall, Edgar has more dimensions to his game, so I've got Frankie Edgar retaining his title with a decision win over Gray Maynard. Alright, welcome back to Kamikaze Countdown. A couple things I want to talk about. The first is retiring/aging fighters. We just saw Matt Hughes get knocked out by Josh Koscheck, and of course we know what Joe is going to talk about. Is this the last time we see you in the cage? Matt Hughes kind of gave one of those answers like maybe, but not really. We'll see. One thing that's interesting is, you look at the different way the different fighters have gone. You have Chuck Liddell. Not everybody's going to be as fortunate as Chuck Liddell and walk into a job with the company. And other guys like Dan Henderson, who have had success in a later age, Randy Couture, who did very well for himself as he got on in age. Definitely seeing how unique those athletes are. But I really hope, especially as the fight game grows and fighters get older and get on and their careers wind down, things turn out well for them. We need to appreciate them while we can watch them, but at the same time understand that, people follow to their prime, and it's just the way it goes. Next thing, the Ultimate Fighter with the featherweights and bantamweights. It's been fantastic. Only a couple of episodes, but these guys really fight. That Brian Caraway fight was an excellent fight on the show. The last one we watched, he looked very good. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this plays. I think this will be a very competitive tournament, and do not be surprised if we don't see a number of these guys, maybe even a couple of guys from the Elimination Show that lost in the UFC eventually, because it's going to bulk up the division, and as Dana White looks to put on more events, we will get to see, we're going to need more and more fighters to fill these events, and these guys are quality fighters, and they throw down. It's going to be an excellent season. Hopefully the shenanigans in the house don't overshadow the competition in the cage. And finally, one quick note, rumors flooding around that in February, the event, we're going to have a dual event. One of the shows is going to be shown in the States, one in Japan at the same time. I'm curious to see how that works out. I'm a little bit iffy on the show. I want to watch, and I want to know I'm watching all the fights, whether it be on live TV, free TV, the pay-per-view. I hope they do this the right way and we're not forced to pick and choose what we watch. Either way, Kamikaze Countdown. Thanks for watching. Alright, so those are my predictions to the event. 11 fights in all. I know it was a lot and it's a little bit of a longer video, but hey, what can you do with that many fights? I'm going to keep this short because the Cruz versus Johnson prelims are just kicking off and I want to go watch them. Please let me know what you think of my fight predictions. If you want to go in the prediction tournament, again, very simple. You don't need to do a video. Just I'll send you an email. It's going to be a bracket. It's going to be cool. I'm probably going to do some kind of video draw for the matchup, so it'll be kind of neat. You'll get to see your name, yada yada, fun. But it's going to be a fun tournament. Doesn't cost anything. Just send me an instant message. Let me know you want to go in. It's the last video before I actually start the tournament. Already 12 entrants. The more the merrier. So please let me know if you're interested in that. I hope to see some of my regulars out in that. Again, Sports Interaction. Check out the link in the description below. Sign up for that. Make yourself a little bit of money. Make myself a little bit of money. It'll be fun. And as always, my new association, MMABettingOdds.com, a great website. Please check it out. It's got a whole bunch of cool tools. You can see, different options, what are available, what sites you can bet on, what money and what prop bets you can do. And finally, before I go, DocSports.com. You can check out my write-up for the main event for this fight, Frankie Edgar, Maynard. I talk about some betting options and other things you can make a little bit of money on, so make sure you check them out. All fantastic sites. Kamikaze Overdrive. We're expanding. We're blowing up, getting associated across the internet. Thank you for watching. That's enough. Go watch the prelims. That's what I'm going to do. I'm out of here.